Muchas gracias. Nuestro siguiente panel estará integrado por Stefan Selesnik, presidente de International Trade Information Inc., Jerica Velling, CEO de Blends Events. La moderadora para esta sesión será Azul Ogazón, directora de Industrial Transformation México y MEM Industrial Tecnomueble Internacional. Les recuerdo a nuestra audiencia en línea que nos ve a través de la plataforma Zoom que pueden elegir el canal español para escuchar la traducción simultánea de nuestros ponentes internacionales. También abriremos un espacio para preguntas por parte de la audiencia, las cuales nos pueden hacer llegar vía chat en la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Adelante, Azul.
Gracias, David. Well, with this video that we just seen, it gives me flashbacks and good memories of what used to happen here in Polyforum. But you know what? It also gives me hope for the future, as this event, what we just saw in the video, happened a few days ago in Las Vegas at World of Concrete exhibition. And to learn what is happening up north, I'm glad to have this conversation with Stephanie and Erica. Welcome and thank you for being here with us. So I'll give you a brief introduction of both. Stephanie is president of Las Vegas International Trade Information Inc. and works with exhibition organizers to internationalize their shows, one expo at a time. They recently introduced the International Exhibitor Representation Program and North America representatives of CINEC, the Shanghai New International Expo Center in China. A second-generation former show organizer, including a couple of expos here in Polyforum León, Stephanie blogs for UFI, the Global Association of the Exhibition Industry and the Exhibition World, and she enjoys sharing knowledge online and in person. She's a founding member of the exhibitions think tank on the faculty of UFI's Exhibition Management School, and is a Virtual Events Institute subject expert matter. Welcome, Stephanie. And Erica, she is the Chief Experience Officer of Blends Event, a conceptual strategic organization which creates innovative and memorable exhibition and events experiences around the globe. She is at Las Vegas Hospitality Foundation trustee, founding member of the International Exhibitions think tank, and the International Association of Exhibitions and Events membership engagement chair, and a commission member, faculty, and facilitator for the IAEE Certified in Exhibition Management accreditation program at the Southwest EAEE Chapter Executive Committee, and is a certified digital event strategy. Welcome, Erica. So as you can see, we have two wonderful experts in terms of all of the industry and the exhibition events, etc. And to start our conversation, the North American perspective of the events industry, I want to give you a little bit of an overview. So North America has been the largest market in terms of exhibition spending. In 2018, it accounted for over 43% of the total worldwide direct spending. We all know that trade shows have significant economic impacts. In fact, the Center for Exhibition Industry Research Foundation estimates an economic impact of $420 billion, which 55 came from hotels, 32 from airlines, 30 from restaurants and retail, 29 from ground transportation. So there's a lot going around in the industry and a lot of key stakeholders taking part of it. So even so, the value of direct spending was 120 billion. And in terms of production, it goes up to 1.1 trillion of gross production. And if we count for job creation, there are more than 6 million jobs in the US that rely on events. So with all of these figures in mind, it is urgent that the industry keeps working. So I'll have the first question for Erica. When COVID-19 hit the exhibition industry worldwide, we all moved to digital events. What happened particularly in the events industry in North America in these regards?
Well, thank you, Azul. I think that our industry is very resilient, and we changed really, really quickly to digital, which is a good thing that our industry is so resilient. But there was some successes and some issues, and massive, massive learning along the way. Some adopted too quickly and were unprepared in creating digital events that met all the stakeholders' organizational event goals. They created events that were trying to replace the in-person event at the original time slot for that event and did not think of the experience they were creating and how that experience needed to meet with exhibitor, sponsor, and attendee goals of participation. For instance, some examples of the digital switch, corporate marketers were forced to incorporate a variety of digital channels to maintain buying cycles, increased brand awareness, and obtain leads. Associations were mandated by their bylaws to hold annual meetings, and some have requirements to accommodate education and accreditations. Digital and virtual events made less money for show organizers, but they kept a presence for their future events, and many obtained a wider reach than before. Depending on the type of the exhibit or the event, there was a surprising increase to new attendees and sponsors, some at like 30% of increase. A recent SEER survey, Center for Exhibition Industry Research, reported that 68% of show organizers that held a virtual event in 2020 agreed that virtual components will be a bigger part of the physical event in future. Many agreed that AI and data analytics has been underused and that there were great opportunities to that weren't used previously that should be used in the future to increase the timeline and extent of the show and the value to attendees and exhibitors. However, another important observation is that not all virtual events are created equal, and most fall into two primary categories. One is the virtual trade show that includes digital exhibitions and show floors, and one is the virtual conference and events that includes sessions, keynotes, etc. Not only are these two different animals altogether, but they seem to generate huge difference in return. In a 2021 survey, for example, by Exhibitor Magazine, when asked to rate the value of virtual trade shows and or exhibits, corporate marketers averaged 3.8 on a scale from 1 to 10. Meanwhile, when asked to rate the value of virtual conferences, that educational component, the average increased to 5.3%, which indicates to me that virtual channels is maybe good at approximating live experiences in terms of content and education, but less successful at creating a viable alternative to in-person exhibiting and qualifying and lead qualifying. That's my take on your question. I hope I answered it effectively.
Thank you, Erika. Yes. So another question for Stephanie. The way that the industry has been operating in the past months has followed different parts in North America. Canada, the United States, and Mexico have had different approaches to let the industry operate. Even we see difference within the provinces and states of those countries. Tell us a little bit of what is happening in this regard and what will be an optimal journey for our industry.
Thanks. First of all, I'd like to say hello to everybody. I absolutely love Guanajuato and the Del Bajío region. I think it's one of my favorite places in all of Mexico, the center of Mexico. And we really want to thank Azul and Karen and the whole Hanover team for having us today. Here in Las Vegas, everything's open. We're 100%. You're supposed to wear a mask if you are not vaccinated. But we know that a lot of people that are not vaccinated don't wear a mask anyway. So it's on their own. It's on the honor system. Parts of the United States were open most of the time. In Florida, the states of Florida and Texas, they never really closed a whole lot for events, but people were afraid to travel there. So they got a lot of local, not much fly-in at all. Indianapolis, in the center of the United States, and Indianapolis, Indiana, kind of went under the radar. They did a lot of sporting events very safely. They mandated a lot of different things for people that were coming, but even, so they continued to do events. They just didn't really publicize it a whole lot. Canada, as we know, is closed. They're waiting until they have more vaccinations. They just have, I think in the last day or so, said they're going to begin to open the border between Canada and the United States for family members who have been vaccinated to go see their families. So we're really not sure when they're going to start, hopefully by the fall. We know that the venue organizers in the industry there, while smaller in size, are equally ready to get back to work. And then, of course, in Mexico, we've seen some successful events. And I want to specifically congratulate Amperfect for trying to do all of the regional events that they did safely to show the government that business-to-business events work and they can be done well and safely for everybody there. I think that's pretty good where we are right now.
Great, thank you. So, with this in mind, for years, the industry had several discussions about change. Nevertheless, it was COVID-19 that pushed us really to change. Most of us went to the digital formats, as you were mentioning before, and now we are implementing these hybrid ones. Stephanie and Erica, both from your experience building global communities as well as creating and implemented purposeful meetings and events, what have you seen that the industry wants and what it needs for the future of the trade shows? So, Erica, let's start with you.
Thank you. And to mirror Stephanie, I love that little video that we played in the very beginning. That's from World of Concrete, which was last week that Stephanie attended. I'm sure she'll comment on that later. So yes, Las Vegas is open, and so is North America for the most part. I think that, a really good quote from an industry friend from a large show management organization is representative of many organizers' comments that I've heard. And that is that they always knew the value of the digital components to extend to 365 days a year, and they never implemented it until the pandemic forced them to do it. And, for instance, as it pertains to education, the one and done in-person sessions are now over and will be live streamed to virtual attendees, or at least recorded and made available for on demand. The beauty of this is that it opens up additional revenue streams for show organizers, from seminar classes, passes for purchase, and sponsorships, and it can help grow the attendee and exhibitor base. I think personalization is so important through omni-channels, and that mindset needs to stay to meet the customer where they are. And the type and amount of digital really depends on the industry sector. For instance, if the product is a more tactile product, like fabric or consumer electronics, maybe a bit better digital focus would be education, and let the in-person focus be the exhibition if it's a tactile product. However, it's always smart to include some sort of digital component and data analytics going forward. And I think that the question that the role that hybrid trade shows and events might play in marketers' long-term plans remains a little cloudy, because not everybody knows what to do and what to pull in. And I think that the mindset needs to be that some expect hybrid components to mirror the live event, although it appears that it shouldn't. Most think that it shouldn't be that way. It should just augment or enhance, which is what I believe the preference should be, that it should enable virtual show organizers to focus less on trying to replicate the events and more on optimizing the strengths of each digital component or medium.
Definitely, Ariel. I think you mentioned two very important words, omnichannel and this part of understanding our customers. I mean, it's basic. Thank you.
Yes.
Stephanie, what's your thought about this?
Well, we all know that virtual or digital trade shows are horrible. They don't work. With what we have right now, they don't work. The return on investment is at about 25%, according to Explori, the last Explori UFI survey that was done around the world. Overall, all around the world, exhibitors hate digital. They hate the digital idea of a platform and of a marketplace. So There's a lot of other things we can do with technology and to drive things forward. So what we need to do is, if we use it correctly, it can create community engagement. We can crowdsource ideas and speakers and topics. You don't have to fly everybody in. For example, today we didn't have to fly to Guanajuato, as sad as I am about that, but we're here. We're able to be here, and it's less of an expense for the organizer. In the US, live streaming is very, very, very expensive. Probably one of the most expensive things that you can do. So in terms of a truly hybrid simultaneous event, it gets to be very, very costly. I think that what we can do is we can do smaller sessions. We can do roundtables. We can engage in new areas. So if there's a newer area of your show, or perhaps a very mature area undergoing change and disruption, you can use the hybrid model. So you can actually work with these sectors and these groups through personalization, to Erica's point, and using technology and using the data, bring them together, get it sponsored, and then live, when you have your event again in person, have the same sponsor a meetup in person with coffees, canapes, cocktails, depending on who the group is. It's also a really good way to initiate the brand new people to your industry about the industry, so that when they come to a trade show, which if you're younger and you're by yourself, or even older, it can be very scary to be by yourself with thousands of people. This way you already have a community with you to be able to do so. So again, it's about, let's learn these lessons. Not everything has to be an hour. Not everything has to be an hour and 15 minutes. You can do beautiful sessions in 15 minutes and run them back to back to back, in person and online. But I think that, as far as the future of trade show goes, nothing beats face to face.
Yes, no, I totally agree with what you're saying in this regard, because we talk with our exhibitors and they say like, no, we need the face-to-face events back again. And yes, I mean, we've moved some parts to the digital arena, but they haven't fully, and they will never fully replace it. And also, we need to see how to use the technology in our favor and to do this, like you propose, the networking sessions in a smaller scale, and help the industry to connect again. So yeah, definitely. So another question. The challenge of 2020 caused significant hardship for many in the industry. This is not new. Yet at the same time, they cemented the value that exhibitions provide to drive business forward. We know that the duration of the virus outbreak remains a key factor in assessing the overall impact of the pandemic. However, the global industry is likely to stabilize after 2023. Within the industry in Mexico, we think that one of the key factors that can help us to achieve this recovery are the vaccines. Nevertheless, we see that in countries like the UK, where even they have a high rate of vaccination, the industry is still not open. So we wonder then, what would be the factor or factors that can get us back to physical shows? Erica, Stephanie, you have attended recently physical events. What can you tell us about these factors, and what measures are working and that can be translated as guidelines or policies for operations for our industry?
So I'll take a stab at that first.
Yes, please.
What's interesting is that, many organizations and leads in our industry are doing rapid surveys over and over, like faster and closer together, because everybody's thought and feeling about traveling has been changing so rapidly. And it depends on the opening of, like when you test North America and you survey people 2 months ago, their comfort level of attending events was a lot less than what it is now. Safety measures, I think, are here to stay. And of course, vaccines need to increase around the world to increase that comfort level, as well as decrease the spread of variants that are out there, in my opinion. The good news is the vaccines are increasing and the cases are decreasing. People want to get back to life as normal. We've been seeing in all of the live events that the in-person events that we've been attending, that it's hard to get almost people to move from one room to the other because they're so engaged with each other. They're, just so happy to be out, and that human beings are that way. We want to interact, we want to create. That's what we need. I think that a damper on exhibitor and attendee attendance right now are company bans, which will lift again as budgets get better and safety signs get better. Um, Stephanie and I experienced Bash, which was a hybrid event in the industry here in Las Vegas, and Stephanie was there in person, the in-person ticket had a fee to it, and I attended virtually at no charge. We both had different experiences, but to tell you, I was very impressed with the event. They're a creative organization anyway, and they offered a quality hybrid or virtual experience for me. They're a for-profit event, and so they spent time and money to bring in speakers and fresh, interesting content. For instance, they're all about creating events, so they brought in TikTok, one of the top executives of TikTok, and how that could affect an event, an in-person or a virtual event, and how TikTok is getting so creative with group events right now. And then they also brought in Anheuser-Busch event director from corporate, which was really interesting to hear her take on how to create fabulous in-person events. So I think that the in-person event, creative content, as well as attendees, that interaction is going to, it's going to take on a life of its own, but there are going to be a lot of similarities going forward.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Well, to Erica's point about BizBash, they had 3 different stages. Only one were they streaming from live, which is what Erica experienced. In person, they had 3 stages, and they used headphones from the silent disco. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that or not. It's when the speakers are using microphones and they don't amplify the sound. Instead, it's on headphones. And you could actually change the headphones and listen to you had a choice of 3 different panel discussions or discussions on each stage that you could listen to. So that was kind of interesting. They did have some security measures in place. They were supposed to be temperature checking. They kind of gave up on it. People were wearing masks, were not wearing masks. The state had just lifted its mandate for that, so it was by choice. One of the speakers on our panel wasn't fully vaccinated, so he kept his distance from everybody and continued to wear his mask. And in terms of World of Concrete, from the video that we just saw, they did a great job. That's the new West Hall that was inaugurated by the governor. It was a very big deal. It was supposed to open last January, and it brings the convention center up to the Las Vegas Convention Center, to the 2nd largest in the United States. They did temperature checks, either on your forehead or you walked through. They had, and masks were encouraged, but not necessary.
Okay.
They had no carpet on the aisles on purpose, and hand sanitizers were everywhere. So they did try to take safety into account. Then last week, Erica and I attended the International Surfaces event at Mandalay Bay Convention Center, and both shows did not use badges. Your badge was a QR code on your phone. Some exhibitors didn't like it, some didn't care, and it's kind of interesting for the future of our exhibitions. Will we actually need to wear those badges that nobody reads anyway? Are they that important? Can we do everything from our phone? Maybe, maybe not. The jury is still out. And at Tice, they had wider aisles. The main aisle was wider. Everything else was the same. But because it's the International Surfaces show, they actually went against the grain, which Informa has mandated with no carpeting as a green initiative, and had aisle carpet. People were very engaged. They had a good presence. What they did, interestingly, was they pre-taped the sessions with the speakers. Then they had the speakers live on stage present to the people that were there. And they used Facebook groups to broadcast the speakers at the same time. So they did kind of a simultaneous, but a little fake. But it was still a very, very effective way to engage the audience that wasn't there in person. The other thing that we really saw is that networking is first, business is second. People are so starved to see each other in person that that's really what they care about. Lots of hugs and abrazos and handshakes. And people were very happy to just see each other. And then, oh, by the way, let's do some business. How long that's going to last, I'm not so sure. I think by the time we hit the fall, the autumn, it's going to be it's going to go back to how it was. In China, we know that they've been doing shows for a whole year. And except for wearing masks and having the hand sanitizers, everything has gone back to normal. So again, I think to echo what Erica said, we have to use personalization. How can we make the attendee journey better? And also, how can we make it easier for our exhibitors to be successful? What kind of new education can we bring in? Because we know that exhibitors, when they're educated, do far better at shows than if they don't. And they will return. And it's a lot more expensive to go out and get a new client than to keep a client. So what can we do for all of those exhibitors? Remember, many, many, many people across every single industry have changed jobs. So where maybe every year, 1/3 of the people that you had were new in their positions or had changed jobs or new to the industry. Now we're looking at least half, honestly. So you have to treat everybody as if they've never been to your show before, which is also a tremendous opportunity to redesign your show floor, look at your rules, and see what you can do to better engage with your community. Remember, trade shows are about commercialization, right? They're about marketplaces. They're about buyers and sellers being together. So at its core, that's still what we are expected to deliver, and we need to deliver it well. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, and it's great that you mentioned these examples because they are concrete examples of things that have been done. And I really like this part that you said about the use of Facebook groups, because I think this year we've just been in Zoom and like the similar platforms, but we're not thinking of the other tools and technology that we have in our hands, literally, that can help us to network, which is what our industry and our consumers need. So that's really great.
Free. Facebook is free. So why not use it? Use the tools that we have that don't cost us anything.
Correct. Yes. Wonderful. So now I would like to open the space for Q&A session for the attendees. So here in the audience, if there's anyone who would like to address a question to our panelists, please raise your hand and we will bring the mic to you. Yes, please. We have one question over here. Someone can help, please. There. No, because I think they won't hear us. Okay, while they bring the mic, I'll go with one question that we have from our digital audience. So it is, what is the importance of cultural difference within the region in the safe organization of face-to-face events?
I'll take that one.
Thank you.
Cultural differences are global. Cultural differences are regional. What people are looking for in Cancun are not the same things that people are looking for, in Mexico City or in Leon. So you have to take the work ethic, the times that people work, and the expectations into account. Something that I think universally we can all agree on is that personal time and family time has become front and center. And the ability to, everybody's met everybody else's kids, dogs, wives, grandmothers, everybody, right? Cats that walk across the screen. So we've all become much more personal with that. We have to take that into account when we're working with people. The other thing, obviously, culturally in the US, the work ethic and what we do here in Las Vegas is very different than Orlando, very different than Dallas, Texas, very different than New York City or LA or San Francisco or in Canada. The West Coast, Vancouver is very different than, say, Montreal, which is a bilingual, in a bilingual province. So you have to learn to adapt better and be more open to what other people think and the way that they do business. We can't just assume everybody does business the same way we do. However, that being said, people with the internet and with email and everything else are used to getting answers promptly. And so I know that some cultures, you don't want to get back to a client if you don't have an answer. What I suggest you do instead, if you don't have the answer, is say, just email the client. If you promise them an answer on Tuesday and you don't have it, don't not send it. Send an email that says, we're working on your problem. We should have it to you by Friday. Thank you for your patience. That way they know that you're working on it and they won't get angry, or you won't have that cultural challenge because you've told them that you're working on it so they can relax and go on to the next thing on their plate.
Great advice. I think addressing our customer is the first thing that we need to do, and telling them that we are looking for their solution or for the service. I mean, that's the word, service. We need to give them a service. So yes, great insight, Stephanie. So we have now the question from our audience.
Hi. Good. Okay. Hi, my name is Raul. I've been dedicating my last 10 years to make music shows, showbiz, and you're saying that at Las Vegas, everything is open right now, isn't it? Well, it's quite interesting because here in Mexico, we've been dealing with some experiments like auto concerts and stuff like that, but I want to know if any of you can tell me, how do you see like this showbiz is going to be in the next, I don't know, maybe 6 months? Because most of the agenda, global agenda about concert shows and stuff like that, it's like going to 22, I guess. So in this case, like you're at the Vegas, at this huge space with huge shows and everything is going on. How can we? What do you think it's gonna be the next step on these presence shows live? Because you say something important about the community and the music industry. It's pretty important. Like every knows their artist or see their artist performing. So, any ideas or thoughts that you be thinking about the showbiz industry? I don't know. It would be cool to hear some of it.
I'll start with that one.
I've got some stuff that can get done.
We have, yes, as vaccines have made people feel more comfortable and the cases have been going down, we have all of our events, like for instance, the hockey, the Golden Knights, that arena is open at 15,000 seats. And we have, the stadium that's going on. We do have concerts that are already started, and we have, of course, the great shows that you see in Las Vegas, and it's at full 100% capacity. And I think that I think that your industry has really gotten hit hard. It's sad, but people really want to go see concerts live. I'll give you a really good example of a great hybrid event that we don't think about too often, and that is the sporting industry has done hybrids really, really well. So, and this is where maybe, until we open up fully for concerts would be something to pull in more often, and that is you go to a big sporting event, for instance, in the United States, it would be Super Bowl. So it's the same event, but two different experiences. There's the person that goes live with the ticket. They experience that excitement. They smell the food. They're hobnobbing with people. The cannons that launch the T-shirts are there. They see things live that a person would not be able to see on the screen. And yet the person at home has a different experience. They're able to hear the commentators. They see the fun commercials, and so when they come together, the person that saw it live and the person that was at home, they can still chat with excitement about that particular event. But there's always going to be the drive, the person that's spending $1,000 a ticket to go to the Super Bowl to see it live. So, I think again, until there is that opportunity to include, to think on screens to help promote the in-person concert, if you will, in the future, but it's never going to replace it. And people will come back at 100% and fill those seats. They want to be there live.
And to add to what Erica said, the most recent example is really this week. So the band The Foo Fighters played at a club in Southern California, near where they live, and they required every single person who went, I believe it was a fan event with 600 people, had to bring their COVID card, their COVID vaccine card to get in. They did the same thing the other night, I think last night in Madison Square Garden, where they have said, as the artist, if you don't have a vaccine, watch the live stream. We don't care. Okay. We don't care. And they don't care. So a lot of that is, some is mandated by the government. In this case, it was mandated by the artists. And you're going to continue to see that. You're going to see in some places where the vaccines are going to, to get in. And in some sporting events in some states here in the US, if you have a vaccine, you're permitted to be in a lot more places where if you don't have a vaccine and you haven't uploaded proof of your vaccine, you're stuck in one little area and that's it. You can't move around the entire arena. And so there is because here in the US, we have some issues with that. Some people are against the vaccine, where we have over a majority of people, of adults in the United States, have now been vaccinated with at least one. So to your point with music, there's an energy with live music, and I know how important it is in Mexico especially, where you can hear music in almost every restaurant and bar. It's an important thing, and it's an important consideration. Again, we're seeing the same things where there have been concerts in Europe, and they've actually studied, have people gotten COVID or not? Were they able to do it safely? So, again, it's if we can make people be safe, then I think things will open up a little bit faster.
And to add to another example to what Stephanie said, there were some of the concerts that I've heard in back east in the United States, they were charging astronomical amount of money for those people that didn't have a vaccine, and those people that did have a vaccine, they were charging like $5 to get in. And it was a very in high demand concert. I'm showing my age because I don't even know who the band was. I couldn't repeat it. But not everywhere does that, like to Stephanie's point, that was up to the musician and the band that was playing. Here in the state of Nevada, it's not required to show proof of a vaccine, and they're filling the stadiums, 15,000 people. And again, it would depend, but that's dependent on the artist. If the artist decides to do it differently, I'm sure that they could do that.
Great. So let's not lose the hope for the events. Okay, so one more question from our digital audience, and it is, what are the growth perspectives for the events and exhibition industry for the United States? I don't know.
What's our expectation? Is that the question?
Yes.
I just want to, okay. Like I said, right now we're seeing a lot of compression in the third and fourth quarter, because most large exhibitions and events have moved from the first quarter into the third and fourth quarter, and some have moved from other states that it still hadn't opened up until it was too late for them to plan, and they've moved into other states that they could move into, like Florida or Texas or Nevada. We had a projection, like a process of where we were at with certain cases and how we were going to open up. So for instance, in Nevada, which is where most of the large convention space is, there's that worry of the overlap of these conventions and the compression. Thank goodness a lot of them are, not thank goodness, but I mean, it's good that we're having these events, that they're going forward. A lot of them are at 50% capacity with exhibitors and attendees, which is a good thing because there is that conversation of labor and skills shortages to be able to produce the shows. To Stephanie's point earlier, there's a survey that went out. There's like, for instance, the massive amount of people that we need to get back into the workforce, 40% are gone. They've either gone into another, at least 40% are gone out of the industry. They've gone into a different industry, or they just feel more comfortable at home for whatever reason, childcare expenses could be an issue, and also some of the subsidies that unemployment subsidies that the government has been paying are an issue. So I think that that will go away by the third and fourth quarter, after we go through these events, and also after some of those people just, are rapidly changing their opinion as we move forward with events. So much so that I don't think that 2023 is the goal for what people think the exhibition and event industry will be back fully. I think maybe 2022, based on how rapidly people's perceptions are changing. We just need to ramp back up, and that is the issue.
And to Erica's point, part of it is the buying cycle. With all of these shows, the compression she was just talking about, will the buyers be ready? Will the buyers be ready in 6 months if they're used to every year, right? So how is that going to affect everything? We don't know. I can tell you that both World of Concrete and TICE that we've seen in the last 2 weeks, they allowed exhibitors to carry over to their 2022 shows. So, for example, World of Concrete is held at the end of January and TICE is at the beginning of February. Both have hit it out of the park with their numbers in terms of exhibitors. Now it's about the attendee recruitment and retention, right? So I think we're going to see that. On the other side of the coin, we're going to see shows go away. In fact, I heard of a show recently that because they were planning on having their show, it was not here in Las Vegas, the exhibitors were in, the attendees were not ready to travel to show site. So they actually had to cancel. We're going to see that. And if you think about the US especially, 65% at least of the trade shows here owned by associations. They're not owned by the for-profit companies such as Hanover or Informa. So they only have a small part of the market. So again, it depends. And to Erica's point, labor is an issue. And will the buyers have the money to do it? Will they want to spend 6 months later after they just spent with pent-up demand? Hopefully it'll go really well. Our fingers are all crossed.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and also to add to what Stephanie's saying, you think on communities, and she's very good with communities, and cultures. There's that community and culture that it's different from show to show to show. For instance, the surfaces show that Stephanie and I visited last week, a really good example of positivity in that regard as to shows coming back. They booked 80% of their exhibitors, which they typically don't at this time this year, for their next event in February. Typically their event is in February, but they had to move it from February this year further out to meet the rules and regulations of the state. But 80% of the normal capacity of the show was sold. So, obviously that's that particular show, and that community, the surfaces community, and right now it's booming. The housing market, the renovations of the housing market, and new homes and such are booming. So the surfaces show, everybody is going to get back to that, and even more so. It's going to be a fabulous show in 2022.
Right, so it's great to know that maybe our industry will come back fully in 2022 instead of waiting a little bit more, because we're urgently and desperately to go back again. So we're running short of time, so just to wrap up this conversation, we see that the future of the business events will not look and feel quite the same. And adjustments will need to be made where innovation will flourish out of the necessity. So Erica and Stephanie, from what you have learned in these past months, what will be your recommendations for the future of the North American exhibition industry? Erica.
Well, I think that, I'm a huge proponent of digital and AI, and I think digital components and events are here to stay. An example is LinkedIn just invested $400 million in Hopin. And also another, and Stephanie might not agree with me, but I think somehow, I'm not talking about digital exhibitions. I'm talking about digital components. And there's so many different types of those components to move forward with, to extend and market the show. And I think what we should always learn from this pandemic is to rethink and never stay status quo. Perhaps one of the things I heard recently that I love to hear is better practices instead of best practices, because when you think of best practices, you stop your thinking and think, oh, that's the best practice. No, always challenge, like the challenge networks within an organization to think and rethink have been really, really positive. And that's what we've learned from this pandemic, is how to be resilient and rethink. I really think that, the digital component, for instance, has changed since we first utilized it in AI, and it's there to enhance, not replace the in-person event. And the other takeaway for me is we've band together in North America with our efforts in the industry with all of the associations on advocacy, but we've fallen short on that in past. But due to the pandemic, we're now pushing forward and having more of a presence for our industry, and to show politicians that our industry affects every industry sector and how important that is moving forward. Had we done this better and handled this better with advocacy and our politicians in time past, I fully believe that we would have been in a different place in this recovery period right now with our politicians, and how they would have rethought exhibitions and events and how we could safely reopen, that we can organize that a lot better in a scenario like this than what they thought that we could, and how important it was to get all industries back and running. So those are my takeaways.
Thank you. And this last part that you said about advocacy, I'm pretty sure that our friends here from AmproFec are taking notes, because it's really, really important that we get our voices heard out there. Stephanie, please.
Technology or tools. Back when websites began, that's how many years I've been in the industry, sorry for showing my age, everybody was like, oh my God, they're going to take away from our shows. What are we going to do? It's a huge crisis, right? And then there was the advent the first time around of virtual events and trade shows, and those are going to take all of our business and everything is going to be bad. Here's the deal about a crisis. It presents opportunities for those that are not afraid to change their thinking and learn new things. None of us thought we'd become digital experts, and some of us have. And digital events are hard. Simultaneous hybrid events like what you're doing today is really hard. And we thank everybody behind the scenes, because they're making it look easy, and it's not. It's really not. So as far as North America goes, I think, goods and services have been going back and forth this whole time with the closed borders, right? This is a chance for us to bring the people together of North America in person in even better ways, and really forge even more cooperation, especially between these three economies that are already so interrelated. We just have to get the politicians on board to understand it's already there. They're not going to take it away, and that it can be improved. We can create jobs across the board, better jobs. We can create better products. And we can do so much more, but I think it's got to have to be business taking the lead on this, and that hopefully the politicians will then follow. I believe the future is very bright for our industry. This has been, as our friend Paul Woodward, the guest editor at Exhibition World, called it, the Great Reset. I think everybody that's listening and they're in person, the one thing we can take is that, have you seen where the opportunities are? Instead of saying, oh, I wish things were how they were, too bad. They're not going back. Your choice is to move forward, or to be dragged forward, or to be left out. And I believe that with the resilience of our industry and the amazing people that we have in the trade show industry around the world, we can make this better, and we can do it better, and we can be better for our stakeholders and for ourselves and our families and our communities.
Thank you. And yes, definitely challenging times have a lot of opportunities, but they're only seen by the brave ones. And I hope that here in Guanajuato and in the Bajío region, we find a lot of brave